A lot of time I'm quiet and I'm observing, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm kind of taking in what's going on. And I think there's a misconception that as a coach, you need to be giving cues, you need to be constantly talking, you need to be constantly, in my opinion, distracting what's going on. And so at the beginning of every day, me and my assistant, I brief them and we go over kind of what the objective is, what we need to improve on, as coaches or, as a whole, as a program. And one of the things we talk about is who can say the least amount of words.
That was Jamie Smith, and you're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, Simply Faster. There are a lot of sports technology companies out there, but Simply Faster is the only website you can go to that features an online store that covers the bandwidth of training technology, from force plates to timing systems to muscle stimulators and more. Some products of Simply Faster that I use and love include things like the Freelap timing system in K-Box, or coaches' favorites such as GymAware. Recently, Simply Faster has added 2 units that as a coach you should definitely take a look at. The first is the Muscle Lab Contact Grid, which is an extremely affordable and portable, step-by-step, literally, system to collect data on jumps, bounds, sprints, agility, hurdle hops, and really as much as your creative mind can imagine. In what used to take a whole runway worth of data collecting strips, the Contact Grid does it all with only 2 small strips that together cover up to 40 meters of sprinting. Ground contact time, step rates, rhythms, and beyond are at your fingertips with this device. Another new unit, the VO2 Master, is an ultra-portable gas exchange analyzer. Don't guess on energy system development when you can get direct insight into VO2 capabilities in relation to specific sports skills, rather than being hooked up to tubes on a treadmill or worse yet, a cycle ergometer to get a VO2 max. Think of the VO2 Master as your own gas exchange lab without the tubes and wires. Deepen your analysis in the specific conditioning preparation of your athletes with the VO2 Master today. These products and incredible customer service make Simply Faster your go-to for your sports technology needs. I'm happy to have partnered with them in sponsoring this podcast. Their support has been tremendous, so check them out today at simplyfaster.com. That's simply with an I, faster.com. Thanks for being here, guys. Yeah, another show. So this one was just more than a show. This one was truly a conversation between myself and Jamie Smith of the U of Strength. Jamie and I didn't even realize this until we actually did the show, but Jamie and I both have daughters who are about the same age. And so we enjoy watching our kids and watching them in their natural state, exploring and learning and moving. And it's really hard not to make connections between how your child learns automatically and then what we're going and doing every day as a coach. The first time Jamie was on the podcast, we talked a lot about his systems of perception reaction and going beyond simply serving athletes on the levels of strength and physical preparedness, but really getting into the decision-making, the time and space constraints, making them a better athlete on every level. And this episode goes into full circle development by means of training variability, the use of nature and natural surfaces in training from young athlete all the way up to an older and more developed level athlete. We're going to talk a lot about menu systems and athlete autonomy, giving athletes decision and making them a part of the training process, especially as athletes get older. We're going to talk about how Jamie uses competition, tons of stuff on long-term development and more. This was a fantastic show. Jamie takes the art of coaching as a guide seriously. In a world where athletes are so often overcoached and very robotic, Jamie is such a breath of fresh air, and I love talking to him about this stuff. Last couple things before we get started. One is about halfway through the show, you'll hear my mic lose a little bit of quality. That'll happen for a couple of minutes, and it will come back, so sorry about that. And lastly, this show is sponsored by Simply Faster and Lost Empire Herbs, and you can get 15% off your Lost Empire Herbs order by heading to lostempireherbs.com/justfly. All right, let's get on to the show. James, man, I know I haven't talked to you, at least on this podcast, since the whole COVID thing hit. I know you were talking to me before the show about some of the natural training, like training in nature and those types of elements that has brought out. I don't know if you're doing that before, but tell me a little bit about some of the natural and using nature in your training and with either your athletes or I know you're with your daughter. What have you been learning lately on that end?
Yeah, it's definitely been one piece to the puzzle, so to speak, that I've been extremely fascinated, obviously out of necessity, with being limited due to the current state And it started off simple, like it started off real simple, just seeing, okay, what branch. So I would, use my daughter. All right. And so for people, my daughter's 4, almost 5 years old. So she's a little one, but just simple. Okay. Let's see what branch we can hang from and see how long we can do it, in the backyard. And it just started to, we call it, and it's so funny every morning. And now it's turning to an AM and PM thing. And we call it our movement challenge. So before we, eat breakfast, before she brushes her teeth, Dada, what's the movement challenge? And so literally, whether it's, snows outside, rains outside, movement challenge, unless it's pitch blackout, is typically done always outside. And so whether it's we have a trampoline, whether it's we have a bunch of different boulders and stuff outside, we have a ton of woods. And so we just started to explore. I was a kid again, and I was just trying to find different ways to get my daughter engaged with movement. So obviously, we feel movement is so important. And it was just starting off simple with one thing. Then it turned into another and another. And I just saw how engaged my daughter was, how engaged I was, because I would do it with her. And it was like, all right, we got to start getting this into the U.S. strength. We got to start getting this into the weight room setting. And so we started off, I'm in an industrial park, but inside that industrial park, we do have, just some different hills, some different boulders, some different smaller rocks. And we just started trying different things, whether it was throwing rocks, whether it's we do at the beginning, a lot of people, to wake up the feet, you would roll with a sensory ball or a spiky ball. Shit, we did isometrics. We did different gait patterns, walking up and down, walking tall, walking in a tunnel, through rocks, completely barefoot through the rocks.
Man.
We would do stuff where, just walking through the snow, walking through the cold, just doing different things outside to kind of get. The big thing I tell the athletes is we want you to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think a lot of people say that, but trying these different things and allowing the athletes to connect with the environment or to connect with nature, it might be one of the best, I don't like to use warm-up pre-training tools that we have. So it really started off with that. And then it started to evolve where we do different things, different depth drops, altitude landings off of all of these different boulders. Then we turn it into a plyo course where we would have, I would put constraints where it'd be like, okay, hey guys, you got 3 movements. They can choose whether they jump, bound, hop, they push off with their hands. I'm like, you have 3 movements. Let me see what you got. And then we would have, a big boulder, a medium-sized boulder, a smaller boulder. And every time they go, we would change the boulder. All right. So think of it like a plyo body. We would change, which rock that they could use to complete the 3 movements. Then it turned into, instead of using med balls, we started doing different rock throws where it would be, and it wouldn't get crazy where the rock was 300 pounds, but we would challenge them and say, let's find different rock sizes, different shapes where we'd put the hands at unique angles. And it's just, that was probably I got the best reception from that. A lot of the athletes really enjoyed the challenge of, trying to pick up who got the biggest rock and throw it the furthest. Really simple human things that I feel are so important. And so it's got me, thinking a little bit more, like we talked before we started this, when I do grow in my next facility, is how can I make this a staple and how can we make this a standard at the U of Strength in inside our program. So that's kind of how we started off with my athletes.
I like the walking on rocks thing. I really love. I think about it's our daughters actually must be similar ages. Mine's going to be 5 pretty soon here, and so it's fun watching both of them. My daughter's 4 and my son's 2, going to be 3 soon. And so I think about a few things that you made me think about. One was when COVID hit back in California, the playgrounds closed, and so the next best thing now is to go and just have kids climb trees. And you watch them climb, and there's so many more options. There's so many more things for them to manipulate. And I'm just standing and, you just put them by the tree and they're going to go climb it. And they're getting so much from a motor perspective versus, sure, they're getting a lot out of a playground too, but it's so much more 3D. It's not even close. A tree compared to, square pegs at 90-degree angles and very not a lot of texture to the fixtures and things like that. So I didn't realize before that happened just how powerful it is to get sensation and texture, and you're in Mother Nature. There's something that's powerful about that goes unnoticed. We don't talk about it often, but I think that it's even I was doing some hill runs in kind of a wooded area with the training group this past year, and I just noticed how just being in the trees changes the feeling of the whole thing versus if you had like a ramp with nothing on it, you know. And but one thing you said I really like that made me think about, and I've thought about this too, is my son. He is too, and he's loved this forever since he's been like 16 months. But we go to the river, he'll just want to throw stones, and it's like it's not even just you get one benefit from it's just all different weights. It's never going to be the same thing. Your body has to do all sorts of different weights and shapes and all this. But you also are barefoot, hopefully. And it's like we talk about good throwers and good pitchers, and they have oftentimes there's a good tensegrity from the foot up. I know at least in cricket, Stephen Jones talks about this a lot, how that back foot contact is really quick, these elastic throwers. It's like, what better way to connect the whole body in this full immersive sensory experience than being barefoot on the ground, charged ground, if you want to bring earthing into it too, and all these different little sensations on your foot. And like David Gray said last time he was on this podcast, he talks about, barefoot training is so great. It's not great if you're on a wood floor that's like, or a totally flat floor where there's zero sensory information coming in. It's really not a whole lot better than being in shoes, to be honest. You have to have these little sensations or irritations, and you combine that with different weights. And I think, wow, this 2-year-old is doing this with no coaching, completely innately. No wonder these athletes are going to grow up and get better versus I'm going to coach you up. I'm going to show you how to put your arm this way and X, Y, Z. And I know we'll get into all the overcoaching, but I love what nature gives us from an observational perspective, especially watching children just operate in nature and seeing what they do and be like, okay, this would be a cool idea for the athletes I work with, and just getting things out of that.
And the biggest thing too, Joel, is the risk-taking element. And I think I don't know how many coaches truly appreciate the importance of that. And again, when I say that, I'm not saying I'm putting my daughter in danger, but I think that's so important. I think it's so important to create some type of situation where there is some risk involved. And it's very interesting kind of seeing her at the beginning, or in my athletes too, at the beginning, and then allowing them to have that interaction with the environment and just how it has changed and gave them the confidence, to try new things. Like the whole idea of safe uncertainty with Keith Davids. I think that's something that is ignored, and I think is one of the most powerful things that we can give an athlete. Yeah, I think it's, aside from the physical side of things, that's another big thing I noticed.
Yeah, I see that all the time just in working with like high jumpers. I mean, and that's a more, I guess you could say, there's not a lot of perception reaction going outside of the bar and approaching the bar versus other people, coming at you. But even watching people's risk taking and risk aversion will tell me that they're sealing a development in that event on some level, because you have to turn let alone pole vault or something like that. But you see that show up in a small event like that. And the more you talk about those things, the more I think about, especially watching children, you think about, without trying to be, the parent who's like, oh, my kid's going to do this. They can do whatever they want. But I try to think about now, just because I think it helps me full circle, is like, what will they be like later? I think about this, like, what will they be like later? Like, what am I seeing now that I'm going to see later? Because I think about athletes I coach who are older, and I'm like, well, what was their development like? What was their path? Not just physically, but also mentally. Like you said, risk taking. What emotion do you associate to training? And I think that's big too with nature. Is like when you're nature, it's all play, and you're not getting judged for failing. Versus like jumping off a rock. Versus, okay, we're gonna do depth landings. Okay, drop off this 30-inch box. I want us to be in this position and be really quiet and land in this. And again, I think that's good. Like it's good to be able to do that, but if everything has an emotional, you did this right, you did this wrong, judgment to it, I'm starting to look even at how that works in athletes' expressions and the looks on their face when they're doing things. And I think that goes a really long way. And so I just had that thought of how this fits into this play-based. And I don't think it's just kids. I think this is everybody. And I hope, I'm looking forward to getting into how you've ported this over to your older groups.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the one thing, especially with the psychological, emotional side, it is it's, and I don't want to use the word trainable, but it can be improved, or it can be what's the word I'm looking for? It can be, it's just, especially once an athlete gets to a certain, it's almost like it's everything is pre-planned, predictable. Everything is okay. We're going to do this a certain way, especially when I get an athlete. I guess I can go this direction, especially when we get an athlete that has been, say, under, has been involved with a certain program or a certain organization, and they've done things very traditionally. And I'm not saying that stuff is wrong. Again, and I don't want to come off as, we don't believe in doing any of the traditional side of things, but it's very powerful when the stuff we said, whether we're getting out into nature, whether we're giving a little bit more autonomy in the weight room, whether we're allowing, the athletes to design some of the, some of our movement activities. It's amazing just seeing how that affects and influences everything else that's going on in their life. So it will improve their bench numbers. It will help them, manage stress with school or with relationships. It's something that you got to dive deeper. And there's more to this sport performance realm than, the sets and reps and perfect form on a back squat or how high you jump, on the just jump mat. Especially with the older athletes, I think you have to, it does take time, because that's a big thing with, and I know now you're kind of more in the private sector. We're running a bit, it's a business. And so you gotta, we take little steps, especially because with the younger athletes, we throw them right in. They love it. They eat that up. If we go away from it, they come back. We want to, Jamie, we want to go back to, and it's like, okay, great. We try to do everything play.
Yes.
Especially with it, anything 11 and under, everything is play, 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 play. But then with the older, it's just slowly kind of getting them. But once they get a feel for it, and once they start to see, okay, we don't need to be doing 5 sets of 10 or 2 hours of weight room stuff. We just need to do this and sprinkle in other, this play or whatever you want to call it, mother nature training, whatever you want to call it. You just see everything else improve. You see, and like you said, you see a different human being. You see a person that is enjoying the process. You're seeing someone, and this is, and I'm sorry, I don't want to go off on tangents, but I just thought of this, so I primarily I have a lot of hockey, right? And hockey is a very grueling, especially at such a young age. Seasons are so long. And by the time we hit January, end of January, early February, kids are miserable. And I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you're winning. It's just the amount of games and the amount of just volume of skating these kids do. I would be miserable too.
Mm-hmm.
But I had 2 kids that at the junior level. So these kids are like 18, 19, 20 years old, to give you context. We did this type of stuff during the season where we had them, and this is going to sound crazy. We had a snowball fight. We did different we did different bounds. I asked the guy that I rent space from when he was plowing, to create like a 45-degree mound. And so we let it freeze over. We did different bounds off the mound. But anyway, so we did some of this play type stuff. And I'm telling you, the mood I saw these kids at the end of the season, you would think that they didn't even play a season. And then from the physical side of things, everything was great. No soft tissue injuries, all that type of stuff. Everything was good, but they were happy. And it just makes me think, it's like, if you're enjoying what you're doing, maybe that is the most important thing. Sorry, I know I went off on a couple different ways there. But
no, I think that I've been thinking about that a little bit too. I think that, I mean, you could say maybe, and this goes out, like zooms out a layer, like how did our youth sports end up this way? Because enjoyment, I mean, I think that leisure time is more in our nature than we think it is. Like, I think as a society, we prioritize grinding and working really hard and sleeping less and doing more. And you could even say that our society is in a state of overdoing. I mean, and so I think that just works its way into what happens with the kids, which is really unfortunate. But it's almost like maybe we can learn from the kids a snowball fight. I mean, I think, how much more fun would the workplace be if, when it's snowing out, everyone went and had a snowball fight, after lunch or something like that.
Because we play dodgeball. And so we were thinking about it. And one of my older guys they were screwing around. And so the old me would have been like, hey, cut it out. What the hell are you doing? But the new me, I saw that, and then I made one and I threw it. You know what I'm saying? And I got involved in it. But it's And I get so much, and it's not everyone, but okay, they'll do this on their own. They'll go out and Joel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but backyard sports is non-existent anymore.
Yes.
Snowball fights, it's frowned upon. Doing these different manhunt, capture the flag, all these real simple games are just not played anymore. And so that's where I see myself. I'm saying, okay, this is, in my opinion, this is important. And if they're not getting it, well, guess what? They're going to get it with me and we're going to do it. And I'm just, whether you disagree or agree, whatever, I am seeing what's happening in my four walls and with the athletes that I have the pleasure of working with. And I'm never going back. I'm never going back. And it's something that when you look at the physical, the psychological, the emotional, and the social, and you understand that all those four are connected and you can't leave one of them out, it's a pretty powerful stimulus for athletic development.
Yeah, that actually what you just said there is just, if every coach just knew those four things, the sports world would be such a better place. And like really invested it if they spent equal time. And the thing is too, I think so often with like the technical, we think we know so much. And even me, I'm constantly reminded that I don't know as much as I think I do, especially like working with a new population of athletes. Even an event I've coached my whole life, it's a new population. There's different mentalities. There's different ways they've done things. There's different constraints. I have to learn things all over again. And I'm realizing actually, could you say those four things again, just so I can like write it down or have it on the top of my mind?
But the physical, psychological,
yeah,
those ones?
So yeah, physical, psychological, social, and what was?
And emotional.
And emotional, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
That's something I take, honestly, me and my assistant, and that's something I truly practice. And I really take into consideration every time I plan a session, right? I plan whatever the movements, the games, the plyometrics, the speed, all this stuff, because we do everything. I keep those four in mind. And at the top of my notebook, because I'm old school, I write everything out and then I type it. So I do both. But I have those four words. And I really take that into consideration when we're trying to teach skill A, skill B, skill C. It's just you can't leave them all out. It's not that simple. And that's something it's a priority for me to keep have all those four elements while, designing and trying to, evolve and make things better.
If you've listened to this show for a while, then you might understand the power of observing Mother Nature when it comes to working with athletes. This might be to the point where I've worked with many elite coaches who have spent time watching animals, for example, to make biomechanical inroads to working with athletes on how we can work better. You can really never go wrong with observing nature in action. I've made a similar jump in the world of nutrition, where I really now look to what nature can provide us from a supplementation standpoint. If you would have asked me about herbalism 5 years ago, I would have just thought about the ginkgo biloba capsules at the local drugstore as some sort of low-grade health alternative. But these days, I've found my way into performance herbalism, featuring high-grade, immaculately sourced herbs that serve very specific functions to my health, vitality, and even my strength development. With performance herbalism, Lost Empire Herbs is my go-to company for all things herbs. 2 times podcast guest Logan Christopher, who is also a very accomplished strongman, amongst other things, is their CEO. And I use several of Lost Empire Herbs formulas and tinctures in my total nutrition regimen, and I've achieved great results. Would absolutely recommend it to anybody. If you want to check out my favorite herbs, as well as learn a lot more about them, as well as get 15% off your order, you can head to lostempireherbs.com/justfly, where you can see some of my top herbs, such as Shilajit resin, which was mentioned by Grant Fowler a few episodes back. So head on over to lostempireherbs.com/justfly for 15% off some of my favorite herbs for health and performance. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, when's the last time the average coach sat down and said, how is the emotional flow going to be here in this practice? How is this going to impact athletes' emotional states? And like, are they having fun? How is their emotional state going throughout the course of the season? Like, we don't ask those questions. So, I mean, I love talking like youth development, but I do want to make this kind of like a full spectrum show. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how these ideas with nature and then the 4 elements are impacting. And maybe we could start just kind of wrapping up what you're doing like on the youth level, maybe before age 12. You said it's all play, but then let's get into after age 12. So where they can start doing more formal training, some of those the more disciplined things can start really being laid down. How does things work in your system as athletes move through that series?
Yeah, so the goal is to get them young, right? And to keep them throughout, so we have 7 to 11 we call our fundamentals level, and we are starting to do a pre-fundamentals, which is kind of 5, 6, 7, which it's basically the same thing. It's just a younger population. But then after 7 to 11, when we get into our foundation level, which is 12, 13, 14, I mean, and I know you probably see this now, you might get a 14-year-old, he might look like he's 19, but at the same time, you might get a different 14-year-old and he looks like and acts like he's 8. So it's a very unique time in an athlete's, in their life. So when they get to that foundation level, yes, there's a little bit more guidance. There's a little bit more, if you want to call it, formal training, but still inside that, we still try to make this a partnership. We still take into consideration, like I said, those 4 components, whether it's, just giving them simple options. It blows my mind just giving an athlete. So saying, okay, so I'm big on creating training menus with our athletes. We're big on creating this partnership, right? And so with our older athletes, these menus are extensive. It might be 20, 30, 40 different options. But with the younger athletes, okay, the training menus, it just might be 2 options where we're just giving them a choice. All right. We're giving them the chance to make a decision and stick with that decision. Because from my experience, that's also going to teach ownership. And so something we do uniquely, I don't know, I haven't really seen or talked to anyone that does it this way, but whatever they choose for however long. So say so now we're talking traditional language, say it's a 2-week training block or a 3-week training block, they have to stick with their choice for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then we slowly just see how they respond, see what they like, and it's a constant process. It's a dynamic process. It's ups and downs. But the big thing is they have a say, because again, going back to kind of those 4 different components, it blows my mind when I talk to parents, or when I have my initial meetings with athletes. So any new athlete that steps through our doors, we set up a 10 to 15 minute meeting, and I just want to get to know them from a human level. And it just blows my. It's just their life is just so structured. Everything is pre-planned. Everything, it's literally the mom or dad will pull out their phone. Yep, Jimmy's got this, and this has to play a role in human development, in athletic development. It has to. And so this giving them the choice, giving them the autonomy to say, okay, I'm going to hold a dumbbell here instead of there, or I'm going to put my foot this way instead of. It goes a long way, and especially with athletes that are going through changes. I think it's important for them in the weight room, whether it's it's a split squat or it's a deadlift pattern or a push-up pattern, giving them, just allow them to solve the problem of doing a push-up or doing a split squat. Is their heel off the ground? All right. Are they having more of a vertical shin? Is that shin a little bit more positive? Are we going to put a wedge and it's going to force the foot to pronate a little bit more? Is the dumbbell contralateral? Is it ipsilateral? Is it goblet? So we let them try to just solve the problem, and we give them that choice of how, of how to do so. I don't know which direction you want to go with that.
I have some ideas, actually. You got a lot of things going in my head there. First off, maybe we could follow up on this in a second. As you talked about the coach as a partnership, I think we don't really think about that. I mean, I think it's I think a lot of people, when they get started coaching, it's like, oh yeah, the sport or this exercise gave me a lot of happiness, and I felt validated and I felt good doing it, so I want to do this. And I think sometimes when we flip that, we think, oh, well, my job now is to give everyone just total instructions on everything, and it makes me feel good to do that because I'm coaching them up. But I think about my own. I've mentioned this on this show before. I've thought about my own development as an athlete. I learned everything myself. I mean, probably too much, but I'm pretty convinced that if I would have competed in a different college situation where my coaches didn't give me the autonomy I needed, and they tried to say, you must do this in all your training and you can't have your own say, I wouldn't have high jumped. I high jumped 7 feet, which was nice, but I wouldn't have cleared that barrier if I wouldn't have been able to make my own decisions and have my own inputs. But somehow, when I flipped to being a coach, I was 23, I suddenly forgot about all that. It's like amnesia. that I had all this beautiful autonomy that helped me to make it my own. And I'm a high autonomy. I'm like the highest of the high autonomy needs, but too,
Yeah.
like I need to have a lot of say. And that frustrated a lot of my coaches. But I found my coaches actually in my past who were more attuned to mental emotional were the ones who really made it for me. Because what they offered was not, the technical mastery. They just knew how to give me options and how to usher me towards what I needed without actually telling me that I needed to do it. And
Isn't that the
that was
coach's,
it.
in my opinion, isn't that the coach's job?
Yes.
Isn't that the role of a coach?
I don't think we see it that way though.
Yeah.
But that's just the thing. And if that was the cornerstone of coaching, I think the whole, not just even like strength and power outputs or whatever, I think for some reason people hold that in the highest, and that's important. But I mean, like you said, everything gets better when you have autonomy and you're enjoying what you're doing, everything gets better. And it's not just, but then if it doesn't, we like try to tack it down to bench technique or something. Oh, you're not strong because your
bench technique is bad. Oh, you need to arch your back more. You need to do it this way and you'll lift more. And it's like, well, no, like your battery, your human organism is powered by emotions and biochemistry. And part of that is decision making and having fun and feeling like you're doing the right thing. And so as I remember, I coached it wasn't until I was 28 or 29. So I've been coaching for 6 years, where a coach, a track coach at Cal, told me about a coach that he used to work with. He said that in the peaking season, he would, like the last 2 weeks before like the conference championships or something, the coach would like just give athletes menus, say, hey, do whatever you want today. And I couldn't believe that. I was like, this is the most important thing. This is the peak and all this stuff. And you have to like, have this magical little taper. And I was like, well, yeah, I had a hard time thinking that the athlete could have a menu. But then I realized that you have to give the athlete credit. They intuitively know what they need. They know what they like. And they oftentimes know, even on a deep level, they know better than you as the coach what they really need. Even though we like to think, I think that we are these master planners. And yes, I've grown a lot in terms of neurotyping and structures and all these things. Yeah, I've improved, but the athlete knows what they like. And so then I heard that when I was 29, and then I had the opportunity to work with world-class swim coaches for the next like 7-8 years. And you see the same thing. You see menus, you see decisions, you see options, and you see putting ownership in the hands of the athletes and the leaders on the team too. And I'm a different coach now, even, coaching high jump on the high school level now. And I think to myself, when I was coaching like youth high jump, like, 10-year-olds high jumping, it's kind of like like you said, they don't need all the options. It's too much for them. I just lay out the cones in a like a basic curve they need to run, and they jump over the bar, and we just give them the chance to explore that. But now I'm thinking on the level I'm coaching right now, it's like, man, I need to, like, I was actually literally before we had this conversation, I was thinking I need to trace like 3 different curve radius, in different colors, and give athletes the option. Right, you can try this tight curve radius, you can try this wider one, or you can do this wider one. Tell me what you like the most. It becomes more and more a big part of it. I think maybe the thing people might struggle with, especially young coaches, you want to feel like the athletes respect that what you're talking about, that it's not a free, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I've had conversations with swim coaches saying, well, because I'm not a great swimmer, but I've had a chat with a swim coach once, like saying, well, if I just could lead the athlete appropriately, saying, here's the constraints, what did you notice, like, I wouldn't be I might not be half bad just by appropriately giving the athlete ownership over things, even though I don't know the sport, as intimately as a lot of coaches. So I just think there's almost taking things from an athlete first perspective would be a huge, experience for any coach.
So absolutely. And so we will have people come in and observe, and they get confused, and it's very interesting because whether, it's a other coach, whether it's a parent watching, whether it's a future athlete, a lot of time I'm quiet and I'm observing, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm kind of taking in what's going on. And I think there's a misconception that as a coach, you need to be giving cues. You need to be constantly talking. You need to be constantly, in my opinion, distracting what's going on. And so at the beginning of every session, at the beginning of every day, me and my assistant, I brief them, and we go over kind of what the objective is, what we need to improve on, as coaches, or, as a whole, as a program. And one of the things we talk about is who can say the least amount of words. And that's something, especially once, and I'm not saying this isn't for, okay, we have a brand new athlete, I'm not going to say anything to the kid. But once kids have some experience, and obviously that's subjective and that's my call. But once I feel it's appropriate, I really try not to say a damn word. I really try to allow my design. I really try, and I mean this, I really try to allow what we have designed to try to do, do most of the coaching. And unless they're putting themselves in harm's way, which is very, 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 very rare, understanding that it's okay for it to not be perfect. It's okay for it to not be 90-degree angles or a complete, upper back is completely flat or whatever it may be, whatever the norm is, from a biomechanical standpoint, understanding that there is going to be some, breakdowns, there is going to be that learning process, and you have to be okay with it. And you have to be okay. Okay, so say, a parent is walking by, it's okay if you're not saying something. It's okay because this is how athletes learn. This is how athletes develop. And this is something I am constantly trying to educate. I'm trying to teach, especially not just in the strength and conditioning world, but in, the sport world, because every coach, it's got to be done a certain way. And if not, then, okay, you're running suicides, you're doing push-ups, you're doing gassers, you're doing up downs, whatever, you're doing blue line to blue line, whatever the sport may be. If you're not doing something a certain way, there's always that negative consequence. And that's something I'm trying to change. That's something I'm really trying to educate the coaches, the masses, the parents, that this stuff is not linear. This stuff is going to take time. There's going to be, like we talked about, ups and downs, and you have to be okay with it. And I always tell them, do you rather have you want to have a better practice player, or, you want to have an athlete that is a competitor and can play come game day. And so that's just the biggest thing that I am trying to do, is really be quiet. That doesn't mean I'm not doing my job. That doesn't mean that I'm taking notes and I'm watching and I'm videoing and I'm taking in a ton of information to try to come up for the next time I meet with this athlete, to give them the best product, the best program. But you don't always have to use your mouth. You don't always have to use words.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You said something a while ago. You were talking about how just how structured these athletes' day is. And it's almost like, and this is, again, I think, a disconnection from our true nature. We view man, our brain, as this machine. And if we input XYZ, we get XYZ out. Like, it's as if people think about it that way. But at the end of the day, a brilliant swim coach, a consultant, his name was Milton Elms, he did a lot of work in the Pacific Islands in swimming. And he talked about athletes who just grew up in the water and no one coached them. They just grew up in the water playing and doing whatever. And he had said that those athletes were just so much more fluid and everything was so much more graceful and easy for them versus, these swim programs are just everything. It's do a stroke this way, hold your arm this way. It's almost like it's the same. This is the same whether I think it's programming a child physically or mentally, things parents say to their child from a belief system perspective, or a coach saying it from it's almost like, even to the point where I don't want to get too out there, but like I've heard even the idea that even as soon as you tell a child that a bird is actually, that is a bird, like that is this, you limit their imagination. You do something to that child that can limit their view of what is. Again, I don't understand that fully, but I thought that was an interesting idea. But it's almost like when you tell an athlete, well, the technique has to be this way. You have to hold your arm this way. You have to do this. You're starting to instill these programs that eventually become subconscious in the athlete that kind of limits their ability. And I think of it this way. It's funny for me, I didn't even realize. It's so sad. I mean, to me, I feel like it's sad. Like I didn't get with this program until recently, but even just the ability of athletes, like in high jump, for example, or even a jump takeoff, like some athletes are more linear and some athletes use a lot more rotation. They'll really let the plant swing around like a barn door rotationally and hit and stick this plant, versus other athletes just can't seem to do that. And I recently realized that a lot of that has to do with the shape of their rib cage. And is their rib cage kind of stuck, and are they more of an exhaled wide infrasternal angle? And they're kind of narrowed and they don't really rotate well, just period. And then there's people who are more of a round rib cage and they can rotate really well and they have a narrow angle. And these athletes are going to it's like the brain's going to do the best it can with what it has. And it's like, it's everything else. I'm telling an athlete who has maybe certain physical gifts to do this movement like an athlete who has different physical gifts. And so I just think that we
should embrace that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we should go with the strengths. And yes, there's going to be weaknesses and there's going to be time and place for that. But I think instead of going right to the weakness, or right to the error. Let's go to the strengths and what the athlete's good at, because that's a strategy I have with new athletes. Is instead of telling them, all right, you're doing this like shit, excuse my language, you're doing this really well, and get that, have that as the first interaction, than something where, okay, you suck, I know everything.
Yeah.
Because that just doesn't work well. Because like you said, and I love that, you tell an athlete, and it's to do this, you need to do it this way. You need to do whatever it may be. You're limiting their creative expression. And in my opinion, and you can watch right now, like the college basketball, and some of these guys that can move, dude, it is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it is creativity at the highest level. Watching what some of these guys can do with the basketball, it is unbelievable. And just so many coaches, and I understand that you feel like you're doing your job and you're trying to help, but you're really limiting these kids. And it's really starting at a young level. Because you said something earlier too, and I'm sorry, Joel, for going, to keep rambling, but you said something about, kids, being attuned to their body. And what I am finding is that, especially at these younger ages where there's no play, there's too much structure, they don't have time. They don't have the experience to understand what that means or what that feels like. And so that's something where I want to step in, especially with trying to get with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds and getting them exposed to these games and in nature and problem solving and decision making and creativity, so they have a chance to do so. Because ultimately, if you're going to become a professional athlete or whatever in life, you need to be a coach of your own body. You need to understand, what makes you tick, what you need to recover, when to, push on the gas, when you need to push on the brake. And I think that if we don't address it now, these kids are going to have no idea. They're going to have no idea what is what. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a huge problem 10, 15 years down the road. I think we will, if there's not a change right now, with our athletic development and how we do things, I think that we're going to see a big difference in, the United States as a whole compared to other countries. So it will be interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, I think we all need, you think of almost like this, like total, like kind of, I don't know, I don't want to use the word consciousness, but this just total like system. It's like, we just don't play enough. We don't, like I said in the beginning, I think that hopefully maybe all things will change. If kids play more, maybe adults will be a little more willing to let the kids have the autonomy and embrace the play. And I think we embrace that in our own lives as well, and realize that children are not just miniature versions of adults, but they have definitive needs for play and self-expression and autonomy. And this athlete you have in front of you as a high school or college strength coach is not just the product of your beautiful programming and periodization, but they're the product of everything they had before them all the way along the line. And it's just, I think about this a lot too. It's like, why is it that, all the coaches who are like the professional coaches, like the respected coach is the one who works with the elite athletes, the ones who have been established and developed. And a lot of times those elite athletes, like they're like, I think about, in track and field, it's really cool to see those athletes who are outside the box in their technique. Like Aries Merritt I think he's still the world record holder in hurdles, the 110 high hurdles. And he has a very distinctive and unique like front arm action that not a lot of other athletes do. And you think to yourself, well, how did he come up with that? Because it's not something some hurdle coaches talk about it, but I feel like there had to be something along the line where he figured that out himself, that was the best way to do it. And I don't know, I just feel like how can we empower athletes to find that earlier versus, this is how you do it and everything that comes with that. So yeah, I feel like more people who devote their lives to coaching should really look to, and this would be my challenge for the industry. I don't say you have this, all your coaching has to be here, but at least to spend some time working with the youth or empowering the people who work with the young athletes and the young coaches, even if it is, and I have thought about this a lot of time, it is a dad volunteering his time or whatever, or a mom volunteering her time, and they don't have time, but it's not hard. Like, it's not difficult at all to just learn about what makes young athletes tick, that they're having fun, that they're able to be creative. These are things that I think are almost innately wired to us, in us as human beings, but somehow we have come up with this thought or idea that, oh no, they need to grind just like we do. They need to do this perfect, just like I need to be a perfectionist. And life doesn't work that way.
No, yeah, and we're setting these kids up for failure. We really are.
Yeah. So it's it's like a simple but such an important thing. So I really like what you talked about. Is like coming in. How can I say the least? Giving athletes menus. Maybe I'd like to dig just a little bit more into that in terms of maybe what does like a session look like for you? Like athletes, maybe older athletes coming in, they have the menu, or maybe like tell me a session with like younger athletes in light of this. Like walk me through it, and walk me through a session with maybe a little bit older athletes in light of this. What does that look like? Or
Yeah.
maybe even if you want to, like 5 years ago versus now too. I think that'd be interesting as well.
Oh God, I'd have to. Okay. Yeah. So with the younger athletes, all right, I'm going to try to keep it simple. Okay, Joe, because there is
Sure.
so many different components. But let's just say for the younger athlete, when they first come in. So what I tell, and so this is, let's just say this is 7 to 11 years old. Okay, when they first come in, just to get their attention. So actually, let me backtrack. When they first come in, we greet everyone. We say what's up. We see how their day is going. We get them laughing. We get them. That's the most important thing. If they don't have a smile on their face, we don't start the training session. It's that simple. So we want, especially with the younger kids, we want them, because a lot of times too, they're still trying to figure it out. Especially if we have a new younger kid, it's funny. You'll get a kid that will just run right in and start tackling everyone and touching every damn thing in the gym, and then you'll get another kid that's kind of peeking around and hiding in the corner. So we make sure everyone's on the same page, everyone's having fun, everyone has that smile. But real simple. So we start with stances. So the first thing we do is we just go over some basic stances and shapes. So whether it's like an athletic stance, a jump stance, a single leg stance, a split squats, whatever the stance may be. So we'll say, okay, guys, today the stances are boom, 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 athletic jump, single leg. And then, okay, guys, your task is you're going to play catch. You can choose a football, you can choose a frisbee, you can choose a sponge ball, you can use our chaotic ball, whatever it may be. And literally their task is to stay in the stance and just play catch. And they're playing catch, but they're getting to choose what ball they use. Okay, so that's a very simple one. Another thing with them, then we do basic, just simple isometrics. I think isometrics are one of the best tools in a coach's toolbox. We do it across the board, every level, every time of year, every session. We have some type of isometric in our program. And so it could be real simple. Okay, hey guys, we have these 9 movements, or nine, we call them shapes, these 9 shapes. Do you guys want to hold it for 5 seconds or 10 seconds? And some kids will choose 5, some kids will choose 10. And it's interesting to kind of see the kids that want to get after it, the kids that are like, all right, yeah, let's go, and they're more into it, they'll choose 10, and the other kids will choose 5. And this is where the social kind of comes in, where the kids that are choosing 5 or choosing maybe the shorter range, they're kind of seeing what's going on. They're seeing some of these other kids are okay, we're going to go 10, we're going to challenge ourselves a little bit. And you can start to see the demeanor change. And then the next session, that one kid that said, oh, I'm going to do 5. Yeah, let's do 10, Jamie. Let's do 10. So giving very simple options like that. That's what so they'll come in, we'll do our stances, we'll do our isometrics. And then after that, literally it's whatever, it changes every single session. It could be where we're focusing, on maybe crawling, and we do all different ways to challenge the skill of crawling. It could be simple. Okay, how are we going to teach them to jump without them even understanding that they're jumping? It could be, okay, we're going to do decision making in a one-on-one situation. How can we do all these different things without them even having an idea? Typically at that level, we will, towards the end, so maybe say it's just for simplicity, it's a 12-week program. Probably the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks, then we'll say, okay, hey guys, do you guys want to do A, B, or C from a game standpoint, and let them choose? But early on, usually we will guide all that and just kind of let them move, let them kind of figure things out. So that's kind of it with the younger kids. At the beginning, we give that autonomy, and then it's just basically play, where they really have the autonomy to kind of try to do whatever they want within the activity. And that's something where very rarely I will say anything. I might joke with them. I may hop in with them and make fun of myself. I might do something where I do my movements will do the guiding, or like I said, or the activity itself does all the guiding. So that's for the youngest. Then with the older athletes, it really depends on the day. So we always start off the session. So same idea. We make sure the guys are enjoying it. It's amazing when you have a smile. And this might piss off a lot of people, but with in my training situation, I let the parents choose whether the kids can wear a mask or not. And so some do, some don't. And so I make sure though the kids that have to wear masks, they pull their mask down. I want to see that they're enjoying it. And that's really important to me. But anyway, so with the older athletes, we do some type of foot sensory stuff. And so that could be, like we said, walking on rocks. That could be with a sensory ball. So typically we have just, it's nothing fancy, Joel. I don't have deep pockets. It's literally just printed on our whiteboard. We have all these different menus for ankle foot series, for breathing, for isometrics. We have general shapes, specific shapes. And then from there, depending on the day, are we going into more, are we going to do a little bit more game and we call it coordination and more gameplay? Or are we going to be more deliberate and do a one-on-one activity that's going to be more towards kind of an acceleration, where the solution is going to be more acceleration dominant? Is it going to be more change of direction dominant? Is it going to more be top speed dominant? Is it going to be more curved? So depending on the day, will kind of dictate how we offer those menus. When we get into, typically once we get into the problem solving, so for simplicity, after we hit our we call them partner reactive skills. So that's something where we're always, so this is the last thing we do before we hit our speed and agility. So this is something where it could be just a simple 1v1 situation. Because in my opinion, I like to keep that perception action coupled, whatever you want to call it. I want to have that contextual information, even if we're doing a 3-step burst. Say we're doing a 3-step acceleration burst, I still want to have that human to human interaction. I still think there's a lot of importance, especially with the older athletes. But anyways, but then once we get into the speed, like say into a speed, let's say simple, we're doing a flying 10. All right. We'll have menus. All right. Some athletes will have, say, a 10-yard buildup, 20-yard buildup, 30-yard buildup. And then depending on how they feel in the moment, and depending on at the beginning of the session, we gather some subjective information, and we do it a couple different ways. But depending on how they feel, we will then guide them to say, okay, are we going to hit 2 reps? Are we going to hit 3 reps? And so we have different ranges for our speed work from a volume standpoint that we allow the athletes to choose. Whether they're just hitting 2 reps, whether they're hitting 3, and there's sometimes they do 1 extra rep and it felt like shit, and it's a learning experience. All right. You can't be greedy. All right. I really am really like that minimal effective dose, that minimalist kind of mindset where, we're just going to do just enough to see, positive results or to see adaptations. And that's a learning process for kids. And that's okay. If you get greedy, you do that 1 extra rep on the sprint, or you do that 1 extra rep on a deadlift, it's going to catch up to you. And so it's a good teaching tool. But anyways, we give options with that. And then if we get into our problem solving work, we give them options on where they want to set the goals, how many flags they're going to put on their belt. We will typically early on, will have a specific activity in mind, whether it's a 1v1 situation. But I will tell you, especially with our experienced athletes, if one of them comes to me and says, hey, coach, or hey, Jamie, if we put a 1v2 here, this is what I feel could potentially happen, run with it, go. The minute an athlete has an idea and has a reason for it, I let them run with it. It's literally, that is what I'm trying to do. I want them to be telling, okay, if we need to do this, and then I'll watch and I'll see. I'll say, hey, was that good? Oh, dude, let's keep running it. Let's whatever. Let's hit another rep at that in that situation. Or if I see it and it's like, yeah, that might be dangerous, or that might be, yeah, that kind of sucks. After the end of the rep, I'll talk to them. I'm like, what do you guys think? And they'll look at me 9 out of 10 times. Yeah, that sucked. All right, let's change it up. Let's try to get it back to, let's get back to the original situation. And I know a lot of people don't like this, but it's the art. It's in the moment. That's why, doing, some of these ideas and trying to do it distance. And I've tried it. It's really hard, man. And it's something that I don't have passion for. My passion is in the moment, reading these athletes, interacting with these athletes, and really, like I said, turning them into their own coach. And so then after that, then when we get into the weight room, then we have with our, say if we're doing some plyometric type stuff, we'll give them options, with the box heights, or if we're going out on the rocks, or hurdle spacing, or if we're, okay, are we going to jump with load? Or are we not going to jump with load? Are we going to jump with shoes on? Are you going to change your footwear? Are we going to put your right shoe on your left foot, your left shoe on your right foot? So we have all these different, we just call them constraints. And depending on the day, and it's the menu too, depending on, then we just give them the options and they choose. And it's just a constant, it's like I said, it's a partnership. I just don't have a blanket because there's so many different components. I can't just say, okay, we do this because it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. But especially early on, okay, we give the kids freedom. All right. That initial, with the stances and the isometrics, all right, there's still some options. That is the most guidance they get. Everything else is, okay, design an activity. Let's go. Let's have fun. Let's compete. Then with the older athletes, it's similar. It's a little bit more directed, but still, it's kind of guided play in a sense. We still will do speed work. We will still do plyometric work. We will still, squat and bench press and do all that stuff. But from, a high velocity movement standpoint, it's the same thing. We design it, let them go, let them compete. And then in the middle, that's where when we're going through puberty, when there's enough, like I've already talked about, where the body's changing and there's enough, of that kind of internal constraints where it's just their body that you might get a kid on Monday and his hormones might be completely different on the next time you see him on a Friday or whatever it is. And so, yes, there's a little bit more guidance. Yes, there's a little bit more structured, even though I hate that word. But again, there's still those options. I don't know if that answers your question, but if you want me to go any deeper with any one of those things, I will.
Sure. So just a question on it intuitively makes sense to me, the young athletes, just give them something, let them compete. And then I'm sure with the things the young athletes are being asked to do, there's probably some inherent variability to it as well that just, it takes care of itself with play and exploring movement options. I'm curious with the older athletes, so you have menus. I'm sure you still compete in a singular thing where everyone's competing at the same thing though, I'm sure at some point, or how does that work with what they end up competing in with if they have more options for the older athletes?
So I'm in a group setting, right? So we will have a specific thing we are trying to do. So if we're doing speed, so say if we're doing a speed, if we're focused on acceleration, everyone is doing acceleration. All right. Or if we're doing an agility, everyone is doing agility. If we're doing plyometrics, everyone, but within that emphasis or in that, whatever, that biomotor ability, we have these different options. And then it's just simple. As you gain more experience with me, those options increase and increase and increase and increase. And it basically comes into a point where I don't know if I want to share this, but literally now I have a couple of athletes where when I'm writing programs, they're with me writing the program. So instead of me just being on the Excel and doing everything, and literally I have them in the office with me. What do you think about this? How do you think we can make this better? And I'm not saying another coach, I'm saying the athlete themselves. Yeah. So we have unless and I'm hoping it will change where I can kind of have a million different qualities being trained at the same time. It's just with my situation and the logistics of, okay, I have a 2,000 square foot weight room. It's just me and an assistant. Plus I can get out onto, open space. It's just, I got to be very strategic with how I do it. But there's an emphasis. And then within that, then we have options.
Got it. So would you have a day, and I will say this before I make my comment here, is I have noticed for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that athletes who have more of an interest in the program, in those people who are look at the program, oh, we're doing this today. Okay, what about this? Or athletes I work with in the online space, obviously it's not, don't have that intuitive, artful in-person session at your disposal. So, but what I found is those athletes who have more hey, I did this extra thing today. We've obviously talked about it, but hey, they'll make a note. Hey, I did this extra thing today because it felt good. Hey, I changed this because this had to happen. Those are oftentimes the athletes that I work with who get better results. As long as they're doing it, as long as they, I think, know that it's not, I mean, obviously an athlete who's yeah, I ran extra 5 miles hard because I wanted to, that's obviously going to work. But within context, those people who are making those decisions, who know how to operate, they tend to get better results.
That's the process, right, Joel? Yeah. And so that's where getting to know. So some kids, they want to be told everything. Some kids, it's a half and half. It's a 50-50 where I'm going to guide, they're going to offer their opinion. And then there's some kids that they just want to do everything. They want to do everything on their own. And it's just figuring out, whether you want to call the neurotyping or whatever type of strategy you want to, or tactic that you want to look at. But it's just, understanding them as humans and understanding, okay, what is going to be best for them. If it's someone like you, Joel, where you like that autonomy, you like to make those decisions, I'm going to embrace that. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to be very strategic with the options I give you, instead of another kid where it's okay, if it's more of if it's a 50-50, then I might take a step back a little bit. So it's just getting to know the athletes and being okay with, who they are as a human being.
Yeah, man. Last thing to wrap it up, because this goes back to all the way when we started talking about this, is like the ideas you're getting from nature, watching kids jump off boulders and throwing rocks with your bare feet and stuff like that. And it got me thinking. I mentioned this before we started recording, but Tadeusz Starzinski wrote a great book, Explosive Jumping Ability for All Athletes. He was years ahead of his time, and one of the things he had his jumpers do in the off season was like repeat. It's very common for track coaches to do like repeat 150s or repeat 200 tempo training for jumpers, just developing elasticity and some basic qualities and things like that. But he would do it on like a trail, like a random, trail in the forest, run 200. And I love that. Like if that is at my disposal, I will 100% of the time in the off season, not 100%, but very often in the off season, I would choose that just because it's always different. And so obviously we don't have trails around, but like, I'm just curious if anything you were talking about at the beginning had impacted what you're doing, like with the older athletes or even the younger, obviously, but like, I know you said you had them maybe jumping off rocks or something, but I'm just curious full circle if that's impacted your thought line here as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because there are a bunch of mini problems. Like you said, if you're running in the woods, and like I talked about, just exploring the woods, there are a bunch of mini problems, and you need to very, very quickly and very effectively, you need to find solutions to all these different problems. Whether if the surface is wet or not, whether it's at a steep angle or not, whether, the branch is thin or thick, whatever it may be, or the boulder might move. The rock is actually, it's moving, it's unstable. They're all mini problems. And so absolutely, dude, it's to the point now where, so let me give an example. Older athletes, we train at nighttime. We will design activities where part of it is we have light. So say we're outside and we have the lights on, but then I turn the lights off and have them problem solve in the dark, where I'm starting to take away some of their eyesight. I'm starting to have them use other sensory systems. I've done it where eyes close, but taking that light away, it's very interesting to see how those movement problems and those movement solutions kind of change. So we'll do that. We'll do that where we change the surf. We'll change. Most recently, I had a group of high school females where we had 3 inches of snow out. We still did our 2v2 agility activity in the snow, and I did not shovel it. I did not plow it. We got into it, and by the end of them, they were all, it was unbelievable. That was the best session of the entire winter program.
That's awesome.
And at the end, they were doing snow angels, and then we had the best lift. I want to say, I'd have to look at it, but we had 3 or 4 PRs on a deadlift.
Wow.
A trap bar deadlift. You know what I'm saying? So it's using the environment. And before, when you thought of it, this is a pain in the ass. So say like humidity, or okay, we can't turn lights on. Oh, there's rocks there. Oh, there's snow there. It's like, yeah, there's snow there. Let's use it. Let's try to use this in a safe way. I'm not creating harm, in a very safe control, in a way that the kids aren't going to get hurt, but it has that element of play. It has that element where it's problem solving. And that's what I'm trying to do, especially with the higher velocity movements, with the speed and agility. All that stuff's important. But when you combine the two, you allow these skills and qualities to be emergent and authentic. Dude, I don't think there's anything else that I can do. I think that's the best thing I can do for kids.
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to, if you just watch Rocky versus Ivan Drago and Rocky 4, that it's the totally structured versus, autonomous, create with what you have. And I think that something about that resides in all of us. But it's good stuff today, man. I love this. I'll need to come visit your gym sometime and see all this in action.
You're always welcome, Joe. Always welcome.
Your coaching style would have been something that I know my high autonomy need would have needed. I probably would have been one of those kids like trying to say, hey, what about this exercise in your office? So really cool. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jamie, man.
Honestly, Joe, I appreciate that. But that's where the best ideas come from. It's just having some of the athletes challenging me and saying, what about this? But why did you do this? And it's like, maybe if we do it this way, this actually will be better. And being okay with that, putting your ego aside and saying, okay, like you said, I don't know everything, and that's okay, but thank you for the time, Joel. I really appreciate it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. All right, thanks for being here. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us out by leaving us a rating, review on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you're listening to. We'd really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week with another great guest.